Hey guys, Dave here. Welcome to Computer Hobbyists. Today I want to talk about why most people never finish their first video game. Many people start their first video game and they have come up with what language they're going to use and what commercial engine they'll use if they don't want to make the engine themselves. They get started on their game with high hopes and most will never finish it. In this video I talk about the 5 main reasons that most people will never finish their first video game. The first reason is they're trying to make that super sophisticated video game they've been dreaming of. You should not be doing that for your first game, second game, or third video game, since you know very little and need to research and create video games in order to develop the skills and experience you need to make your dream game. What you need to do for your first video game is say to yourself, what is the simplest possible video game I can make? After you've done that, go out and create it. Learn to make a Windows installer in a Macintosh.app file, post the game on itch, and then think of something slightly more complex for your second game. When creating your second video game, you can reuse parts of your first video game unless you found a better or simpler way to do things to save time. In addition, you can use your lessons learned from your first video game to help make your second one better. Once you've finished your second game, use all the lessons you've learned from the first two to make your third one even better. Now that you've completed your first 3 small video games, you're smart enough and experienced enough to decide if you're ready to make that ultra-sophisticated game you've been dreaming of. The second reason most people never finish their first video game is that they don't schedule time to work on it. I work on my video games 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I force myself to do it even when I'm really tired or burned out. When you work on your game 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, eventually your game will actually be finished. If you're one of these people who just works on it one weekend every few months, you'll never finish your video game. It's as simple as that. You have to dedicate time to work on the game and do so even when it's hard. The easiest way to do this is to shut off the TV set and instead of watching TV or YouTube videos, write code. The third reason people usually never finish their first video game is because they're too lazy to do research and learn how to make video games. What I mean by this is people do a few tutorials online and start making their game immediately. That's the worst thing you can do. There's nothing wrong with reading the tutorials, but when you're done with them, you need to jump on Amazon and buy a book about the video game technology you're using, whether it be Monogame, Unity, Godot, or whatever. Get the book, read it, go through the example code, understand it, and then start making your video game. You'll learn a hell of a lot more from reading that book than you will ever learn by Googling everything and watching YouTube videos. I've learned a lot from every video game development book I've read. The fourth reason why you can't finish your video game is because you haven't been honest with yourself and going over what your true strengths and weaknesses are. If you're scientifically minded, good at math, and mechanically inclined, you'll do well learning to write code. However, if you're not good at these things and better at things like British literature, philosophy, and art, you shouldn't try making a video game on your own and instead just do the art and level design for it and hire someone else to write the code, because your brain doesn't work in the method needed to write code. I know you don't like hearing that, but it's the truth. One of the biggest lies people are told is that they can do anything they set their mind to. It's a nice sentiment, but completely false. You can do quite a bit you have a talent for, but you can't do very much you don't have a talent for. A wise person knows their talents and chooses to do things that utilize their talents. Focusing on things you're bad at is the surest way to failure. The fifth reason why some people don't finish their first video game is because they're a type of person who never finishes anything. You've taken on too many projects in your life, and you work on them, but when it starts getting hard, boring, or you become interested in doing something else, you give up. If you're that type of person, you'll probably give up at this too. However, if you become disciplined, you can overcome this, but you need to overcome this before you start writing video games. One of the smartest and most talented people I've ever known was a classic example of this. He took on tons of projects, worked hard on them, but then would quit when it got too hard, boring, or he thought of a new project to work on. In one case, he bought a used Corvette, fixed up many things on it, but got bored when rebuilding the engine, so he just gave up and sold the disassembled car for practically nothing. That's all I got, guys. I'm not trying to scare anyone away from making video games, but being brutally honest is probably what you need. So if I angered you, too bad. I'd rather anger you by being perfectly honest than tell you what you want to hear and send you on a path doomed to failure. Have a good evening.